that fresh autumn. Breeze was in the air, it felt like fall. My favorite season, it was my boyfriend. Carter and I's first fall living. Together in our new home I wanted to. Surprise Carter by decorating the place. With fall and Halloween themed decorations before he got home from work. One day I thought it would be cute. I bought a few things from a nearby Marshall's and a few other stores, and I also looked on different apps and websites, most notably Facebook. Marketplace, I simply typed in fall decorations and one listing really caught my attention. It was a picture of a big green plastic container which contained a bunch of fall decorations. I clicked on it for more details and more. Or less, it said everything must go. Entire container of fall themed. Decorations for sale, for cheap. The price was only $20. It was a steal, that entire big container was full of decorations at the bottom of the attic. Also said selling other stuff, clearing. Outhouse, everything must go. Check my profile. So I clicked his profile and looked at some of the other listings he had. There was a weird assortment of things this guy was selling, an allegedly new iPhone for $700, a few articles of women's clothing and Christmas decorations. There were others, but I didn't go through all of them. The profile itself was kind of low-key. Everything was private. The man's name was Cody, and his profile picture was a close-up of a gray trucker's cap on a guy's head, but his face was covered by the brim of the hat. The cover photo was a blurry photo of a lake. I messaged the profile and he replied instantly. I asked, what kind of decorations were in the container? And he said all sorts, table, where outdoor decorations, etc. So I excitedly told the man I would come by them today if he were available. He confirmed he would be around later on, close to 9 p.m., as that's when he'd get home from work. He sent me an address. I looked up the address on Google Map. Street view, it was not in the best town, honestly, but the house looked completely normal. 2 cars in the driveway, and the street view picture lawn kept nice, so I agreed to meet. I had my friend Sally come with me just to be safe. I went to pick up Sally across town, and we were off to this Cody person's house. It was a half-hour drive. Sally and I had some time to catch up on the drive there. When we got off the highway entering the town that the house was in, Sally started half joking around about how sketchy the area was. I say half joking around because I know she was saying that partially to be funny and make light of the situation, but also because everyone just kind of knows this really isn't the best town. It was dark out though, so honestly we didn't see much besides street lights, traffic lights, and some storefronts. As we got closer, I saw my phone screen turning on as it vibrated in the cup holder of my car. At the next light, I checked my phone and saw that it was messages from Cody on Messenger. He said, when you get here, you can come right in. I showed it to Sally and she said, what the hell? We both could agree that that was a bit uncomfortable and that we'd ring the doorbell anyway. We pulled up to the house and surprisingly, there were no cars in the driveway. There were dim lights on in the house though, that could barely be seen through the closed blinds of the windows. I messaged Cody back saying, we're here, can you come to the front? Sally and I both watched the house as I waited for a response, and then we both noticed at the same exact time at one of the windows the blind slightly shift, indicating someone was watching us through them. Then just as quickly as we noticed it, the opening and the blinds closed. A few seconds later, the front door opened and Cody messaged me back saying, I'm at the door, you can come in. It was a bit of an unsettling situation, and I was just happy I brought Sally along. The two of us got out of my car and walked closer to the front door. Before getting too close, I called out Cody's name a few times only to get no response. Sally whispered we should leave. I took a few steps closer and said, Cody, one more time, really loud in there. Was no response. I turned and whispered, let's go, and we started walking back to the car when suddenly I heard a guy say, hey, yes, I'm here inside. We turned and saw a man at the doorway, but only about half of him. He was like peering, only half of his body around the door. He waved us inside. Sally and I cautiously turned back and started walking back too. The door as I got closer, he fully opened the door, but then also walked out of view. We walked up the steps and into the house, keeping the front door open, and right away got hit with a strong scent, like that cotton scent from an old person's house mixed with something very unpleasant. We heard fast and heavy footsteps moving away into another room, followed by his voice saying, "It's over. In here, come here." His voice was freakishly deep, like it was intimidating. I made sure Sally was right by my side. Before entering the adjacent room, we were faced with a very weird sight, a dimly lit living room with a depressing, pinkish red carpet and really old looking furniture, but the smell in this room was putrid. It smelt like actual death. In the middle of the room was a red container with a green lid on top of it. There was this Cody man standing just over the container. This was the first time I got a good clear look at the man, and he was not a friendly looking man. He invited me over to come open the container. I took note of the fact that this container was not the same color as the green container that was in the picture on the Facebook ad. It also was a completely different shape from the looks of it. I asked him to open it himself, and he said, "Well, you're no fun." That comment already had Sally and I inching backwards in the direction of the front door, but when he lifted the lid off the container and we were suddenly blasted with another putrid smell, we turned for the door and left in a hurry without looking back until we got to the car. Sally kept telling me to hurry up. By the time my car was on, all I know is the front door to the house was already closed. I don't know if he was watching us through the window again. We were gone very quickly. We never actually saw what was in that container. It was definitely not decorations, though. After telling Carter about all this, he asked for the address of the place, and I told him not to go there. He assured me he wouldn't. He just wanted to look up the house, so I gave it to him the next day. He returned home later than usual from work, and he told me he stopped by the house and an older woman answered the door, insisting that she lived there alone. He knew I wasn't lying, though, because I showed him all the Facebook messages with the guy, which included the address. Upon looking up the records of that address, it does list the owner as a woman in her late 60s. This was an incredibly disturbing and unexplainable experience. From now on, when buying stuff online, I avoid going to people's houses. It was 2019 when this happened. I remember specifically because it was the year I was living on my own in Asheville, North Carolina. I moved here for a temporary job, and it was an excuse for me to live on my own for the first time. I was 22 years old and just out of college. I had an apartment in downtown. I could walk to most things I needed, but I also had my car for when I wanted to branch out or venture out of town. The thing I loved about Asheville and North Carolina in general was the sheer amount of hiking trails. I'd been to many around town, but one I hadn't been to was DuPont State Forest. One day I decided to go. The drive was just under an hour from Asheville. It was a random Wednesday in October. The leaves were starting to change, and it was the perfect time for a hike. I didn't have work that day, and it'd be a work day for everyone else. It meant I'd probably have the trails all to myself. I got to the parking area for the park, and I found where one of the trails began. I walked for a while, and the trail was serene. I was the only one out there. That day, it was a cloudy day, and we'd been getting a lot of rain that week, which was more of a reason I wanted to go, because the trail would lead to some nice waterfalls called Triple Falls and High Falls, and the waterfalls would be more impressive after a few days of rainfall. I only had to hike about 4 miles before getting to the Triple Falls, which was a really cool sight. A little piece of trivia: a scene in the Hunger Games was filmed at this waterfall. I took a few videos and pictures as I sat on a rock. For a bit, I noticed a woman in the woods. On the trail, she was looking at me. I waved at her, trying to be polite. Then she just turned around and slowly walked deeper into the woods until she was out of sight. Not really something I gave a Second thought to anyway, I wasn't tired, yet I had literally just started hiking. So I didn't sit for too long. I got up and headed back to the trail. I didn't want to try climbing the rocks of the waterfall because they were incredibly slippery. I continued to ascend up the trail and eventually came to the higher point of the falls called High Falls 1. Took a few more videos and pictures here and sat on another dry rock for a bit. Swear I felt the sense of deja vu when I saw that woman again in the woods by the trail. Once again, she was staring me down. I didn't wave this time. I instead looked down at my phone, pretending not to notice or care. I couldn't help but glance up after like 10 seconds, and now she was gone. If I had to guess, the woman was like 55. She had short grayish blonde hair from the looks of it, but again, she was pretty far away. So this was all just what I saw of her from a distance. I didn't see which way she went, but whatever way it was, I wanted to go the opposite. I kept walking the direction I'd been walking and eventually came to another landmark of the trail, the covered bridge. I once again stopped here to take a scenic video and a few photos. I drank a bit of my water and then looked at the end of the bridge from the side I had just walked from. I saw that woman. I swear I didn't see her there before I started taking videos and pictures. I also didn't hear anyone walking behind me. She was once again staring right at me as if I were doing something wrong. I was getting annoyed. I started walking over to her and said, "Excuse me," but she just turned around and started walking away. Actually, the speed at which she was walking away for someone at her age was unsettling. I almost felt concerned at the possibility that she may have been somebody with special needs that needed help, but I didn't convince myself to go chasing after her. I just leaned on the edge of the bridge for a few minutes before deciding to turn back. I had already been hiking for about 45 minutes and it would take another 45 to get back down to the car. Walking back down the trail, I came in the direction that woman had gone. I passed a younger woman and walking her dog, so I decided to stop her and ask if she'd seen an older woman pass by. She said no, and just trying to make conversation about it, talk to somebody about it. I told her how I kept seeing that woman popping out of nowhere and looking at me, then just walking off. She laughed and said, "That's really, really strange." I didn't want to take up too much of her time, so after we both shared a laugh about it, I continued on my way. The entire way down the trail, I grew a bit paranoid that I'd see that woman lurking around in the background somewhere again, but all was quiet. On the way down, I passed one other person who gave me a friendly smile and a nod. Other than that, I made it back to my car undisturbed. Later that day, I went on a date with a girl I was seeing there. We went to our favorite local bar to get some pumpkin spice beers and watch baseball. I told her about the woman on the trail and she found it amusing because honestly, it did sound funny. After that, I went home. Fast forward to that night when I was in bed. I hardly ever wake up in the middle of the night. I'm a pretty heavy sleeper normally, so me waking up in the middle of the night in the dark was unusual. I was still coming to when I heard something at the foot of my bed. I looked up and saw the figure of a woman at the foot of my bed. I felt as though my insides had just fallen out of my body. I started screaming so loud that I'm sure my neighbors could have heard it. Even with the windows closed, I started crawling against my headboard, trying to distance myself as much as possible from the female figure at the foot of my bed. Then she just turned and walked out of the room. I stopped screaming, now more so trying to just catch my breath and slow my rapidly beating heart. I flicked on the lamp and started shouting, "Who's there?" I listened, but there was dead silence. I grabbed the knife I had in the nightstand next to my bed and jumped out of bed. I flicked on every light switch I passed until the entire apartment was lit up. There was no one there, not in the closet, not behind a couch, not under any beds. And so I called my father. I didn't know what else to do. I needed to share what just happened with somebody. My father, groggy, picked up the phone, and after explaining to him, he said I must have hallucinated it while I was still in my half-asleep state. He said I wasn't fully awake yet, and so I could have been seeing things I knew. Deep down, he was probably right, but it didn't make the image I saw any less real looking or horrifying. And then I told him about the woman in the park and how the figure at my bed actually resembled her. He said, if anything, that further proves his point, that my brain conjured up a familiar image from earlier that day. Somehow I went back to sleep that night with my bedroom door barricaded with my dresser, just in case it wasn't until 2 days later that I heard from my mom that her sister in Germany died. I'd never met my aunt she'd been basically estranged from. My mom, as she hadn't left Germany in over 25 years, my mom and uncle flew to Germany to attend the funeral, and it wasn't until she got back home and I saw the prayer card with my aunt's face on it that once again I felt like my organs dropped out of my body when I realized she looked identical to the woman I saw on the trail that day and hallucinated. At the foot of my bed, this story shook my whole family, especially because I told my dad about all of it and the hallucination before we even got news of my aunt's passing. I was born a Catholic, but never found myself to be super religious after confirmation. But goddamn, does this really send shivers down my spine and make me question what exactly I believe?